Maurice Nicol, Psychological Commentaries, Volume 4, Amwell, March 31st, 1931. Note on second force. People want the sun straight off, so to speak, and do not have understanding that they have to come up against the second force and work very hard before they can get anything. Let me ask this question. Are they tramps or lunatics? In one of Ibsen's plays is a description of a very unbalanced young man who ends up his life by shrieking that he wants the sun. When I saw this play many years ago, I was impressed by the ending. I thought that there was something I did not understand. You must realize that it had never clearly occurred to me that there was second force in life, and that therefore everything requires effort. Some of you may remember how Icarus thought he could fly to the sun wearing the wings invented by his father, said to have been made by out of some kind of wax. As he rose higher and higher, the sun melted his wings and they came off and he fell to the sea, now called after him the Icarian Sea. If you can understand what I mean, he had not calculated second force, namely the difficulties involved in doing anything. But the case of Icarus refers psychologically to a man who thinks he can attain divine being and does not understand that he has no strength and no understanding, and takes the whole thing physically using the wrong methods, thinking that by rising up in the air towards the sun, the external visible sun, he can change his level of being. He does not realize that externally the sun represents the higher centers in him, and that he has to work on himself a great deal to reach that level, represented in visible life as the sun. He must reach the invisible sun in himself. He does not realize that development of being is an internal matter, and quite possibly if one begins to be taught how to achieve such development. In other words, he thinks externally and thinks that by means of, say, larger machinery, he may reach the sun or even the stars. All esotericism, all this work teaches is that you cannot be different unless you begin to change internally your level of being. No matter how many cars, how many Icarus wings you have, how many new plastics join the wings to yourself, you will not be able to get to the sun in yourself, namely your higher centers. However, I suppose this is difficult for many to understand, who still think that they're only in their bodies. Such people imagine that by going into space or rising higher and higher in space, they're changing their being, and that the kingdom of heaven is high up in the sky. But a person could change his being without having an aeroplane or Icarus wings. He might change his being even living in a small cell, by observing himself, remembering himself, and by not identifying. It is not extraordinary that people believe that a change of outer circumstances like another wife, another house, another car, another government could make things different. Do they imagine that they could be different? Let me say that the work assures them that nothing would be different, however they change their external circumstances. The work says that to be different, you must change your being. Because if you do not change your being, you will always attract the same circumstances and the same difficulties. Go up, if you like, into the stratosphere. Does that change you? All you will then do is to boast more than ever. If you fly to the uttermost parts of the earth, are you not the same fool? Now, second force appears to be in two different situations and to act in two different sides of our lives. First of all, second force seems outside of you and takes, let us say, the form that you cannot get a job or pass an examination, or it makes you feel that if you only had a better situation, a better house, everything would be different. This is second force seen externally, which will oppose you always. And please understand that second force in this external form is not a question whether you have money or not. Often when people get more money, they find life more difficult than before. But second force also meets us wherever we begin to do this work. This is the point. This work begins with self-observation and trying, let us say, not to identify so much or not to be so negative. Here you will find second force in a most accessible and formidable way. You will find you cannot observe yourself, or you cannot remember yourself, or you cannot help identifying. So second force is in two different directions, it seems. For people who are not doing this work, second force will seem to exist simply outside of themselves. Suppose you make an aim for yourself in connection with this work. You will find at once that second force will get up against your keeping this aim, and you will find it very difficult to know how to deal with this second force for many years. Most people think that they could easily be what they wanted if they really wanted it. They are in perfect certainty that they could be different if they wanted to. Let them try. The level of your being will always attract its own quality of second force, and no matter how you alter your external circumstances, if you can, and how much money are left and so on, you will have the same second force which arises from yourself. You have always been anxious about everything, say, and are now given plenty of money. You want to be happy. But as your level of being is characterized by always being anxious, you will continue to be anxious now, perhaps, about this new money. In this work, we are given very stern orders, as far as we can make out, that we should not be anxious. Do you understand that you cannot change your being if you still have the same thing predominating your being? For example, always being anxious about everything. This is a psychological disease. The curious thing is that if you follow the work and separate from the various things that the work teaches you to separate from, not only will your being attract quite a different inner life, but your external life will become different. You will meet new people. So it seems to me that second force in life and second force in the work are related. Often, when you fail in external life, it is because you do not work or think enough from yourself. And this usually means that your being will attract failure because it is too lazy. Now, many people think that God created the world just for our enjoyment, but God, you must remember, when He created, divided into three forces: active, passive, and neutralizing. This was in the nature of things. This means that everyone will have to meet second force in some form or other, whether he is in comfortable circumstances or not. Second force exists externally and internally, and unless you see this, you will always blame someone else. Let me ask you a fantastical question. Suppose you had been God and had created everyone to do your will. Would you not have become bored with everyone's behaving rightly? Do you not think that the serpent would have had to be introduced to make something go wrong? Some of you should really read this most interesting symbolical account given by Moses in Genesis about man who was created in paradise, where presumably there was no second force. Have you noticed a little boy playing with his electrical trains which all go beautifully? He gets bored. But if one truck falls off, he is at once interested. The whole point is that the second force is in the nature of things and is not an evil God, but an aspect of God in which you have to fight with Him in order to develop. Perhaps you will understand that without second force, no one could grow internally. When we struggle with our mechanicalness and try to behave more consciously, are we struggling with second force in us? How can we expect, if we are created as self-developing beings, that we could develop if everything went as we wanted it to go?